particularly affected. So some of these facilities have not really had a serious inspection for 2 or 3 years. So we've approached this with a couple of creative things that have really worked out pretty well. One is we put together teams from other inspector districts to come up and do sort of a blitz of activities where we have 2 or 3 inspectors. One will be the guy lifting the lids, looking at stuff. The other will be the scribe writing it all up. And they do more inspections in a shorter period of time than they would target individually. And that's had a couple of advantages. It covers our vacant area, and it's allowed for some really good cross-training and encouragement of consistency, because we'll bring in guys really from pretty different parts of the state, but maybe they each have different things they have to do. This is the area around Santa Fe, which is, of course, our headquarters. So we can bring in guys from farther distances that would not necessarily pair with each other to encourage consistency in our inspections and get that area covered the way we do it. The scary part, we've had our hiring freeze in place for pretty close, well, 7 or 8 months, and it's will at least continue until June of next year. And now the administration is saying, well, you guys have been doing such a great job without these positions, we're thinking about eliminating them entirely. And part of my feeling is that, well, we've been really creative and we've worked extra hard, but I don't know if that is sustainable long term. And morale-wise, that could be a real blow. So I'm just curious if other states are facing that question of losing things that they have considered pretty essential. I mean, you know, to lose an entire territory position is going to be rough.
We had Florida.
Dottie Diltz, Florida DEP. In the same vein of Liz talking about staff, just an observation that we have staff who have been in the same waste programs, solid waste, hazardous waste, tanks for 10, 15, 20, maybe 30 years. And it's a double-edged sword. They're very knowledgeable, but they are resistant to change. And as we try to bring on new technologies and streamlining and efficiencies and workflow and going paperless, it's an uphill battle. They're fighting us along the way. This is the way, these are the processes they have put in place 20 years ago. They still work fine. Why are we getting in their business? So.
Okay, we got Alabama, and then, oh, this is great. I'm not having to call on people anymore. Steve?
In the ways to do staffing, something that we did several years ago in our remediation and permitting programs was to move away from the stovepipe staff for like Reckless, Ursula Brown, the major remedial programs, federal facilities, and group it so that a given staff member is responsible for whatever statutory remediation programs would be at a facility and have them cross-trained. That has enabled us to have, in some cases, fewer staff on a project, but also being more nimble to adjust to workloads that would come in the various programs or budget changes, because we don't have a fixed staff that's just RECRA or just CERCLA. It's a combined staff, and we can adjust to it a little better. So similar to what some of the folks are talking about with inspectors.
Yeah, Carl Spadaro, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And even though Pennsylvania DEP's budget was cut by 20 to 25% this year, we've been inundated over the past 2 years with work associated with gas well drilling through half the state in the Marcellus Shale Formation. And a lot of the drillers are from out of state and don't realize that we regulate the brine and the wastewaters from gas well drilling as solid waste, not as hazardous waste, but solid waste. And we absolutely do not have enough time in the waste programs to do compliance inspections and monitoring, as well as necessary permitting of the transportation, storage, and treatment of the brine waters. And so we've been maybe not very successfully, but have been trying to bring in other programs, Pennsylvania DEP programs, including our water quality program, and we do have a separate oil and gas program. And that oil and gas program, despite the funding cuts, their program has grown to respond to all this gas well drilling. So we've tried to bring in other DEP programs to help us with solid waste compliance and inspection work, and it's the only way that we're going to be able to cover that additional work.
Bob Delaney from Michigan. As most of you know, Michigan's been in a 10-year depression, and I think we've tried just about everything that's been mentioned in here, from even to the point of we can't offer coffee to people that come into our offices anymore to try and save money. But a lot of things don't work too well, or work fine in the short term, but over the long term prove to be very problematic. Right now, it's to the point where funding is so dramatically reduced, like in our cleanup programs, that they're trying to rewrite the law. And most of us, I've been in government for 25 years, and are pretty cynical about what's going to come out of that law. They want to go more to a private-based cleanup program, for instance. And the last time we did that, we've been doing that in the underground storage tank system for a long time, which has been both an environmental failure and an economic failure, in the sense of technically the work that was done was very poorly done, and when we were funding it through state money, they bankrupted our system. So hopefully we're going to get it right this time, but we've kind of been the test case for a lot of this stuff. So if you want to see if you're going to have to do this long term, what works and what doesn't work, we'll probably show you more what doesn't work. But anyway, that we've been there and we've tried it.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Scott Raddick from North Dakota, and we have a really small program in North Dakota for haz waste, solid waste, and tanks. And I'd like to talk about one of the things earlier about efficiencies. And one thing that we've found is that, well, we don't have a separate enforcement division for our environmental programs. The regular staff, the program staff, works on enforcement when it's needed, but we all know that enforcement actions take a lot of time and resources. So what we've found is that putting extra time into compliance assistance actually saves us time in the long run by needing less enforcement actions. Our regional staff at EPA sometimes thinks we're not doing enough enforcement, but actually we have a very high compliance rate on most of our programs. But in the long run, that's really worked out for us.
Okay. Which record is a preventive program?
Charles Johnson.
Yes.
With Colorado Department of Health and Environment. I'm actually on the solid waste side of the shop. It's in with Colorado. We've done a lot of things that Colorado was able to eliminate hiring staff, even though we just went to the legislature and went back to approval.
I'm seldom not accused of being too quiet. But we went to the legislature last year and won the battle to bring in 3.5 new staff, but have not hired them. We do telecommuting, we do webinars, and a variety of things. And y'all are talking about new initiatives. Solid waste, I think, is somewhat interesting. Having grown up on the hazardous waste side, is everyone who has a dog in the hunt each legislative session may bring in a new law. So it's not just initiatives, it's actual new laws that become new mandates. And it's not somebody's necessarily new idea where they want to turn the knob a different direction. It's an entire new knob or entire new machine. And we're continually in the position of not only evaluating what we can do, but also reprioritizing what we can't do and where that's going to hit the floor. And I've just been part of a stakeholder session where legislators passed laws a couple years ago and was having to